Victorian Cradle, Football League Foundation, 1888 to 1900s. The true story of the English top flight starts not with the Premier League's shiny brand, but in the grime and industrial might of the late 19th century. The competition was the Football League First Division, founded in 1888 by the visionary Aston Villa director William McGregor. This was the Victorian Cradle, where the game made its first, seismic shift from amateur pursuit, played by local gentlemen, to a full-blown professional reality. The debate over broken time, paying players for time lost from their main job, and then full-time professionalism had raged for years, nearly splitting the game, until 1885 when the Football Association reluctantly permitted professional registration. The inaugural champions, Preston North End, immediately set an untouchable standard. Dubbed the Invincibles, a name they held over Arsenal for more than a century, they achieved a spectacular, unprecedented League and Cup double in 1888-89 without losing a single game. This team, driven by Scottish international Nick Ross and the pioneering goalkeeper William Traynor, demonstrated that discipline, cohesion, and training could now overcome mere enthusiasm. Their success was not just sporting, it was an industrial success, proving that investment in talent and structure yielded tangible results. The economic engine of this nascent league was the industrial heartland, the factories, collieries, and cotton mills of the North and Midlands. Towns like Preston, Blackburn, and Wolverhampton poured their working-class identity into these clubs. Early rivalries were intense and territorial. The West Midlands derby between Aston Villa and West Bromwich Albion was a raw battle for regional dominance, defining local pride through sport. The early rules were a constant subject of furious debate. The offside rule was draconian, tactics were rudimentary. Kick and rush. And the sheer physicality of play was brutal. The defining star of this era was the mercurial Welsh winger, Billy Meredith. Famed for his low-slung shorts and ever-present toothpick, Meredith was a genuine crowd-puller, an early celebrity whose mastery of the wing, a quick, dazzling, and unpredictable dribbler, made him a massive financial asset. He personified the new, marketable professional player. This foundational period, built on local pride and the burgeoning power of the industrial class, laid the immutable bedrock of the English game, the grueling league format, the sanctity of winning, and the emotional connection between a club and its city. Early power grabs, new money and rivalry solidify, 1905 to 1915. As the 20th century began, the league entered a crucial phase of early power grabs, as the burgeoning financial model was tested. The abolition of the maximum wage was still decades away, but wealthy patrons and ambitious businessmen began finding increasingly elaborate ways to inject capital into clubs, formalizing the transfer market and escalating player wages through bonuses, side deals, and employment contracts. This financial escalation caused immediate friction and the hardening of great city rivalries. The Manchester feud truly ignited with the seismic, scandalous move of star player Billy Meredith. After being implicated in an illicit payments scandal at Manchester City, Meredith made the controversial jump across town to Manchester United in 1906. This was more than a transfer. It was a clear signal that star power, illicit payments, and finance were beginning to override old loyalties. Manchester United, benefiting from the new investment and the star power of Meredith, secured their first league title in 1908 and followed it up with another in 1911. The players, facing increasingly wealthy owners and rigid contracts, fought back. The legal and financial conflict escalated, leading to the formation of the Players' Union, later the PFA, and the threat of widespread player strikes in 1909. These footballers were fighting for the fundamental right to freedom of contract and a fairer share of the game's growing revenue, a conflict that would echo throughout the century. Crucially, this period forged the most venomous rivalry in the capital, the North London Derby. The pre-existing competition between Tottenham Hotspur and Woolwich Arsenal was transformed into lasting hatred in 1913. Arsenal, seeking better revenues, undertook the aggressive and brazen act of relocating north of the River Thames to Highbury, a move directly into the heart of what Spurs fans considered their own territory. The vote to keep Arsenal in the First Division after World War I, allegedly through dubious means, cemented the animosity. This was a naked declaration of territorial intent, making the North London Derby a permanent, emotional, and defining feature of English sport. Top players of this tense, volatile period included the defensive stalwart and Players' Union leader Charlie Roberts of Manchester United, and the prolific goal-scoring machine Steve Bloomer of Derby County. This pivotal period proved that finance, star player recruitment, and deep-seated territorial pride were the relentless forces that would govern English football. Right before the outbreak of World War I brought the entire contest to a grinding, dramatic halt for 4 long years. The lessons from this era were clear: ambition would be monetized, and rivalries would be eternal. Interwar resilience. Rule changes and Dixie Dean's apex, 1920 to 1940s. Emerging from the long, grim interruption of World War I, the league entered a crucial phase of interwar resilience, defined by radical rule changes, tactical innovations, and goal-scoring explosions. The football authorities, keen to reignite fan interest after the war and boost excitement, sanctioned the most pivotal tactical amendment in league history, the revision of the offside rule in 1925. By reducing the required number of defensive players between an attacker and the goal from 3 to 2, the rule instantly and violently exploded scoring. It created acres of space in the final third, forcing defenders to retreat and opening the door for dynamic, goal-heavy attacking play. This new tactical freedom led directly to the ultimate statistical marvel, the rise of Dixie Dean of Everton. Dean, a physically imposing centre-forward with legendary aerial dominance, took full advantage of the rule change, achieving the impossible record of 60 league goals in a single season, 1927-28, a statistical feat so far beyond the modern game that it remains the ultimate, unreachable individual benchmark in English football. Dean's legacy was not just goals. He was a working-class hero, a dominant force whose sheer power and celebrity transcended the sport. Simultaneously, the managerial genius of Herbert Chapman, at Huddersfield Town and then Arsenal, introduced the age of the modern, scientific tactician. Recognizing that the 1925 rule change exposed the old defenses, Chapman devised and implemented the revolutionary WM formation. This system was a deliberate countermeasure. It used a deep-lying center half to protect the back line and a structured attack with 5 players forming a W in attack and 5 players forming an M in defense. The WM was the first truly structured, modern tactic in world football, allowing for defensive solidity while encouraging devastating counterattacks. Chapman was a pioneer in every sense. He implemented rigorous scientific training, used physiotherapy, timed his team's passage of play, and was the first manager to successfully lobby for floodlights at his club. This systematic, visionary approach led Arsenal to a period of unprecedented dominance, securing 5 league titles in the 1930s. The defining rivalry of the 1930s was Herbert Chapman's Arsenal versus the rest of the country, a challenge of his scientific, metropolitan dominance against the more traditional, rugged northern clubs. The era was about modernization, new, sophisticated tactics, record-breaking goal scorers, and surging, professional popularity built upon the dramatic shift from the rugged chaos of the past. The league was finally catching up with the ambition of the best managers and players, creating a fast-paced, high-scoring spectacle just before the shadow of another world war darkened the continent. Post-war revival, full stadiums and tactical rebirth, 1950s. The moment World War II ended, the country poured its emotional energy back into football. The immediate years saw an emotional and explosive post-war revival. Exhausted but unified, the nation attended matches in record numbers, resulting in a true golden age of spectator volume. Standing room-only crowds of 50,000 to 80,000 were common occurrences at clubs like Chelsea, Manchester United, and Arsenal. Despite the emotional resurgence, the optimism was shattered by a brutal reality check. The English national team, regarded globally as the founders and moral authorities of the game, was exposed as tactically naive. The shocking 1953 defeat of the English national team by Ferenc Puskás's magical Hungarian side at Wembley Stadium, a humiliating 6-3 loss, was a watershed moment. Described as a funeral for the old English way, it brutally exposed the deficiencies of the rigid, outdated kick and rush style that still prevailed. The English game was forced to look beyond its borders for tactical lessons. This crushing defeat paved the way for innovative managers like Matt Busby at Manchester United, who recognized the need for technically superior, youth-focused football. Busby spent the late 40s and 50s building a team with the express intent of challenging the old tactical guard. He created the legendary Busby Babes, an incredibly talented, young team of homegrown talent, with an average age of just 22, that captivated the nation with their fluid, attacking style and technical skill. Key figures like the powerful, once-in-a-generation defender Duncan Edwards and the prolific goalscorer Tommy Taylor promised a dynasty that would dominate Europe for a decade. The emotional arc of this era reached a devastating climax with the Munich air disaster in 1958. The tragedy, which claimed the lives of 8 of the team's most promising young players, was a national trauma. Busby himself survived with grave injuries. The disaster simultaneously ended the dream and defined the club's eternal identity, as one forged in tragedy and resilience. The era was defined by the raw volume of passionate support, the painful acceptance of tactical backwardness, and the rise and fall of one of football's most beautiful, tragic, and influential teams, a team whose unfulfilled potential would linger for decades. Managerial dynasties, Shankly, Paisley, and European glory. The 1960s and 1970s marked the golden era of the managerial dynasty, a time when larger-than-life figures built empires that defined their cities and ushered in the age of European dominance. The abolition of the maximum wage in 1961 was the financial catalyst, allowing clubs to pay star players market rate, immediately increasing the financial stakes and competitive edge. The axis of power revolved around the Northwest, defined by the contrasting genius of Bill Shankly and Bob Paisley at Liverpool. Shankly, a master motivator, famously took a struggling second-division club and rebuilt it on a foundation of fierce community spirit and unwavering commitment, creating the legendary bootroom culture. His famous rhetoric of "us against the world" transformed the identity of Liverpool Football Club. His successor, the quieter, tactically meticulous Bob Paisley, took the foundation and perfected the formula. Paisley, a genius in personnel management and tactical evolution, led Liverpool to an unparalleled period of sustained excellence, winning an astonishing 6 league titles and 3 European Cups between 1974 and 1983. Key players like the rock-solid defender Alan Hansen, the midfield general Graham Souness, and the peerless forward Kenny Dalglish formed the spine of this European powerhouse. Meanwhile, Matt Busby completed his emotional rebuilding of Manchester United, featuring the iconic trio of the mercurial, flamboyant George Best, a Ballon d'Or winner, the stoic hero Bobby Charlton, and the devastating forward Dennis Law, the Holy Trinity. Their 1968 European Cup win was an emotional, cathartic climax to the Munich tragedy. The defining tension of this era was the intense Northwest rivalry between Liverpool and Manchester United, a battle for regional and national supremacy defined by managers who saw themselves as custodians of their city's spirit. Adding dramatic subplots, the era also saw the extraordinary, chaotic genius of Brian Clough and Peter Taylor. Clough, with his bombastic personality and eye for talent, led both Derby County, a small, provincial club, and Nottingham Forest, a sleeping giant, to league titles and, sensationally, consecutive European Cups, challenging the established order with a blend of raw charisma and tactical simplicity. This period solidified the Premier League's eventual core values, that intense, decade-spanning rivalries, driven by managerial personality, create the most compelling drama. Dark years, decline, hooliganism, and European exile, 1980 to 1992. The 1980s were English football's absolute nadir, the dark years, a decade defined by tragedy, violence, and institutional decay. While the great managerial dynasties like Joe Fagan and Kenny Dalglish kept Liverpool dominant on the pitch, the sports infrastructure and public image spiraled downward. Stadiums were collapsing, often decrepit and unsafe. The game was plagued by chronic, organized hooliganism that led to mass violence both inside and outside the grounds, earning English football a global reputation for thuggery. The darkest chapter, which forced international intervention, came with the Heysel Stadium disaster in 1985. Before the European Cup final between Liverpool and Juventus, 39 people, mostly Juventus fans, died due to a stadium wall collapse caused by the charge of Liverpool hooligans. The devastating punishment from UEFA was the unprecedented 5-year ban of all English clubs from European competition, with Liverpool receiving an additional year. This exile was a catastrophic blow to the talent pool and prestige of the league, creating a massive brain drain as top homegrown talents like Gary Lineker and Mark Hughes were forced to seek competitive action abroad in Italy and Spain. The final, catalytic tragedy, the moment that forced profound, non-negotiable change, was the Hillsborough disaster in 1989. During an FA Cup semi-final, 97 Liverpool fans were tragically killed due to overcrowding and poor policing in a caged standing area. This horrific event finally forced the government to act. The ensuing Taylor Report was a seismic, mandatory decree that demanded all top-flight stadiums be converted to all-seater venues. This effectively killed the dangerous, anarchic terrace culture and forced clubs to undertake massive, expensive investment in modern, safe infrastructure. This period of deep shame, financial struggle, and profound tragedy was the necessary crucible. The mandatory safety overhaul and the financial need for a modern, profitable product created the essential, non-negotiable groundwork for the sleek, commercial powerhouse that was about to break away and become the Premier League. The game hit rock bottom, but in doing so, it cleared the way for its own rebirth. Television boom, Premier League foundation, 1992 to 1998. The formation of the Premier League in 1992 was the direct, revolutionary financial response to the decline of the dark years. The first division clubs broke away from the Football League to independently control their own revenues and, crucially, their intellectual property. This move ushered in an entirely new commercial age, the television boom. The catalyst was the astonishing £304 million deal with Sky Sports, which poured an unprecedented, transformative amount of money into the top flight. Sky's marketing was aggressive and revolutionary, rebranding the game with a slick, global image, complete with rock music, slow-motion shots, and the now iconic "The greatest show on earth" tagline. The product was no longer just a sporting fixture, it was a high-value, cinematic, subscription-based entertainment package. The immediate injection of cash allowed clubs to attract a new wave of international players, led by the enigmatic, magnetic French forward Eric Cantona at Manchester United. Cantona was the perfect Premier League anti-hero, a player of mercurial genius and controversial flair who became a cultural icon, defining the league's early, rebellious edge. Manchester United under Sir Alex Ferguson quickly adapted to the new commercial reality, established an immediate, unwavering dominance, and won the inaugural title in 1993, setting the template for success in the new era. However, the new wealth also allowed for romantic, powerful challenges. The first major one came from Jack Walker's big-spending, homegrown Blackburn Rovers, managed by Kenny Dalglish, who won the 1995 title behind the astonishing goal-scoring tandem of Alan Shearer and Chris Sutton, the SAS partnership. Their success proved that massive investment could buy instant results and temporarily break United's chokehold. This era was fundamentally defined by the transition from traditional football culture to a professionally marketed, branded, and globally ambitious sports product, powered by the exponential growth of television money. Continental clash, Wenger, Henry, and the Invincibles. The late 90s and early 2000s saw the Premier League reach its first true tactical peak, resulting in the Continental clash. In 1996, the arrival of the rail-thin, intellectual French manager Arsène Wenger at Arsenal introduced a seismic shift in philosophy. Wenger revolutionized the English game with European ideas, rigorous diet, a ban on alcohol, scientific training, and an emphasis on technical fluidity and passing over raw British physicality. Wenger's systematic approach created an immediate, visceral conflict with Sir Alex Ferguson's abrasive, powerful Manchester United machine. Their managerial duel was arguably the greatest, most emotionally charged rivalry in the league's history, a deep-seated philosophical and psychological war that drove both clubs to impossible heights. It was the clash between the relentless, psychological, hairdryer dominance of Ferguson and the measured, intellectual science of Wenger. This was the era of the United-Arsenal duopoly, where the title was practically decided by their head-to-head encounters at Old Trafford and Highbury. The battle was most viciously embodied on the pitch in the midfield, a constant war zone between United's terrifying enforcer and captain Roy Keane and Arsenal's dynamic, physically superior captain Patrick Vieira. Their personal rivalry, often spilling over into tunnel confrontations and outright hostility, became the emotional core of the league for half a decade. Wenger's crowning achievement was the 2003-04 season, where his team, led by the peerless French striker Thierry Henry, became the Invincibles, going an entire league season unbeaten, a feat that has never been repeated in the Premier League era. Henry, who redefined the role of a modern forward with his speed, elegance, and goal-scoring versatility, was the perfect manifestation of Wenger's beautiful, fluid football. This period proved that technical skill, sophisticated tactics, and sustained brilliance could challenge, and sometimes eclipse, the sheer will and power of the established guard, setting a new gold standard of perfection. Global takeover, billionaires, Mourinho, and the Big Four, early 2000s. The league's trajectory was forever altered in the summer of 2003 with the arrival of the ultimate game-changer, the massive investment following the shock takeover of Chelsea by Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich. This was the global takeover, which introduced the age of the sugar daddy owner who operated outside traditional financial constraints, and immediately shattered the existing competitive structure. The financial landscape of the sport was permanently rewritten. The new money was instantly and aggressively put to work, acquiring a squad of international superstars and, crucially, a new manager. Jose Mourinho, the enigmatic, self-proclaimed special one, arrived in 2004 and immediately transformed Chelsea into a defensive and physical force, based on an unyielding, rigid structure. Mourinho's blend of tactical genius and master-level psychological warfare instantly propelled Chelsea to back-to-back titles, establishing a brutal new paradigm where instantaneous, sustained success could be purchased. The league became defined by the ultra-competitive, exclusive group known as the Big Four: Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, which monopolized the top four spots, and the lucrative Champions League qualification, for a decade. This created a relentless, intense rivalry era built on star power. Key figures included Chelsea's dominant, goal-scoring midfielder Frank Lampard and Liverpool's inspirational, never-say-die captain Steven Gerrard, whose midfield duels defined the emotional core of the early 2000s. The era also saw the final flowering of Sir Alex Ferguson's United dynasty, spearheaded by the emergence of the global icon Cristiano Ronaldo, whose transformation from skinny winger to goal-scoring machine was a defining narrative of the decade. The presence of these stars, Ronaldo, Lampard, Gerrard, Drogba, solidified the Premier League's reputation as the global destination for elite talent. The massive, escalating financial gulf between the Big Four and the rest of the league accelerated, cementing the Premier League as the world's wealthiest and most globally competitive league. Super Team Era, City's Centurions and Perpetual Dominance, 2010 to 2025. The modern era is the Super Team Era, a period of relentless tactical brilliance, state-level wealth, and exponential financial escalation. The 2008 takeover of Manchester City by the Abu Dhabi United Group created the second, and arguably more powerful, state-backed financial behemoth, fully normalizing sovereign wealth and club ownership. This was the moment the traditional order was irrevocably broken. City's early struggles ended dramatically in 2012. Their first title, won by Sergio Aguero's dramatic, last-kick goal at 93 minutes and 20 seconds against Queen's Park Rangers, was a moment of pure, chaotic adrenaline that announced the new power structure. This single goal marked the definitive shift in Manchester power, and the beginning of a new dynasty. The league's competitive peak was reached with the arrival of two generational tactical minds, Pep Guardiola at City and Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. This became the ultimate, most demanding Guardiola versus Klopp rivalry, a tactical duel defined by City's hyper-efficient, possession-based, positional play, control and Liverpool's high-octane, exhausting, gegenpressing. Their simultaneous pursuit of perfection pushed the point tallies to impossible levels. Guardiola's City, driven by the need for mathematical efficiency, became the Centurions, in 2018, the first team to reach 100 points in a Premier League season. The spectacular, romantic counter-narrative of Leicester City's 5,000-1 title win in 2016 provided a brief, chaotic break, a final nostalgic echo of the league's unpredictability, before the Giants closed ranks again. The final phase of this era is defined by City's unchallenged dominance. The arrival of goal-scoring titans like Erling Haaland ensures that the records keep tumbling, with City setting an untouchable new bar by becoming the first club to win 4 consecutive league titles, 2021 to 2024. The Premier League is now a hyper-efficient, global export machine defined by tactical complexity, relentless pressure, and a financial power that demands continuous, relentless excellence, tracing its competitive spirit all the way back to the very first professional kick in 1888. How many eras have you witnessed, enjoyed, and loved the most? Let's know how it made you feel in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video with your fellow football loved ones and hit that bell so you don't miss the next countdown. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy this, leave a like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe cause I'll be posting frequently here.